tired of the same old thing. Nothing seems to change in this life I'm living. I'm tired of the false pretense. I'm trying to be someone I'm not, it don't make sense. I'm tired, Jesus, help me to be the person you always intended me to be. The practice, I need practice. The practice, the practice.
What white people hear is, I need to give up my power, or I need to give up my job, or I need to give up my money or comfort. When we're talking about equality, there is enough to go around. We need to think about.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Practice Podcast once again. And I'm really, really thrilled to have Chine McDonald with us today. I had the privilege of reading Chine's book earlier this year, God is Not a White Man. And as a Black person, a Black man, I found it incredibly challenging. In the context that I'm in a predominantly white middle class space as a pastor, it brought up a number of things for me. And I actually shared your book, Chine, with everyone on our leadership team and invited them to read it as well. And I posted it all over social media because I think it's a really important book to read. And I want to say to everyone that's watching or listening, if you haven't read that book as yet, please do get it. I will put a link in the description so you can find it easily. But I think definitely with recent events that it is a book for now. It was a book back then, but it's definitely a book for now, and I would encourage everyone to read it. So I want to start by saying welcome, Chine, and I want to say thank you for writing it. And I've got a series of questions, and I know that there's a number of things that we're going to talk about on this podcast. But actually, I'd really like to start with, what was it that compelled you to write the book in the first place?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and the kind words about the book as well. So I've written 3 books now, and each one of them has been a journey. And the first book that I wrote was in 2013. I was just a baby. I was in my 20s. I don't know what I was doing writing a book, but I wrote a book about body image among Christian women. And as I was writing that book, I realised that actually a lot of what I was talking about in terms of my personal experience of feeling in some way less than, in some way different, was actually a very particular thing about being a Black woman that was different to being a white woman. And kind of everything I do, I think about through a theological lens. That's how I see the world. That is my job. That's my training. And I started to think about why it was that I felt like I was not at the top of almost like the human chain. It was almost like this, white men came first, then it was all the others, and then it was kind of Black women, brown women at the bottom. And I started to see lots of instances of that, or lots of symbols of that, both in the mainstream, in the secular world, but also in the church. And one of the most kind of vivid ways for me of seeing that is the ways in which God is portrayed in many different ways, if you kind of look at art and culture and history, but also what that says about what people's internal narratives are about Black people versus or as opposed to white people. And the book really starts for me when I read and watched a book called The Shack, which is by William P. Young. And it's, if you haven't read it yet, I'm gonna spoil it. In the book, God is portrayed in 3 persons. The Holy Spirit as an Asian woman, Jesus, the Son, as a Middle Eastern man, and God is represented as a Black woman. So, and that for me was like revelatory. So the book is an unpacking of that. It's an exploration. It's a journey of seeing why that was important to me and why that felt different. But all of the ways in which basically white superiority or white supremacy is intertwined and shows up in lots of different spaces, in the church and relationships, in development and education, but also most kind of disappointingly within the theologies that we have created over the many centuries.
Thank you for that. And I remember, I haven't read the book, but I have seen the film. And I think it was Octavia Spencer that played the black woman that represented Jesus. And I remember at the time that there were a number of people that were like in disbelief, like, what? A black woman playing God? And on a whole number of levels, in the sense of, one, her being black, two, she being a woman, all of those things. I remember people were a little bit beside themselves because of that imagery. And I remember watching it thinking, wow, it was a wow moment for me, in the sense of, yeah, absolutely. But I think a lot of that boils down to our perspective of God, or how we see God. Um, Whether there's imagery of like a white man with a white beard on a cloud somewhere with a scepter that's controlling everything, and wrongly or wrongly, that image is that image in particular has stuck with me, and I know it's not exclusive to me. There'll be a number of other people that have that, but it's not just that. I grew up in a West Indian household, so my parents are from Jamaica, and I remember when I was younger, we'd go and visit certain people of a certain older generation, and often there would be pictures of Jesus in their house, and it would be not even of a Middle Eastern white man. I'm sorry, a Middle Eastern man. It would be a white man with blonde hair and blue eyes, often depicted holding a little lamb or something like that. And that was the image. And at the time, I just didn't think anything of it. It was just really normal for me, and for obviously a lot of black people. But it's not until I got older and, started my own discipleship journey and started to, go deeper into this stuff, that it all started to make a lot more sense for me. Um, so I just wondered what your thoughts are, in the sense of like that ideology, because I don't even think it's just exclusive to some black people. I think some white people view Jesus in that way as well. And I just wondered what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, occasionally, I mean, I talk a lot about the book, and I will often find people might ask me or say to me, "Oh, well, I don't see Jesus as a white man, or I don't picture God like that." And I think those are the exceptions. So I kind of am like, okay, well done you, but most of the world, I would say, does. And those images that we see in the global South, or in Christian homes, of a white Jesus, are because that's how Jesus and God have been portrayed. I talk in the book about a particular image called Head of Christ, which is by Warner Salmon, which is um, it's kind of Jesus as an all-American 1950s high school kind of kid. And it was kind of created by an American artist. And that's been reproduced over 1 billion times. So if you went to Christian homes in India, or if you went to Christian homes in Nigeria, where I'm from, you would find that image. And I think the fact that Octavia Spencer playing God was so shocking, including to people like me, shocking in a kind of positive way for me, but shocking in a negative way for many, in particular areas of the church, was because we have been conned into thinking that the authentic Jesus or God is white. So we need to question why it is, because presenting God as a black woman is just as right or wrong as presenting God as a white man. And also it kind of, we have this perception of Christianity. There is a perception of Christianity around the world of being a white European religion. Now, this is obviously complex. This is centuries of history and the missionary movement, and the intertwining of Christianity with colonialism. But actually, the places in which Christianity is growing now is in the global South. Even if you look at the Bible, it's not just Jesus that wasn't white. It's all of them,
Yeah.
none of them, and maybe the Romans. But we're talking about a story that is situated in the Middle East among brown people, among Jesus being a Palestinian Jew. This is not he was not European. So I think we need to question our reactions and what's going on internally when people find that difficult or shocking or surprising. That to me is it's telling of an ideology, theologies that have been wrapped up with European ideas. I studied theology at university, and um, you would think that it's only white European men from the 19th century that were able to kind of think and write
Mhm.
about God.
Mhm.
These are the dominant voices that have shaped theology, and people are human, so they recreate God in their image
Mhm.
in many ways. However, I didn't. So even now, if I picture God and Jesus, I have to. The first image instinctively is of a white man, and that's because of a whole lifetime's worth of conditioning. Um, I think some people think that, oh, Chinese people see God as Chinese, Nigerian people see God as Nigerian, and white people see God as white and European. That is not the case because of the dominant stories that have kind of pushed forward these ideas around the world and over centuries that would make me, even as a black woman, not see myself as reflected in the image of God in this simplistic sense.
Mhm. Mhm. And what is the impact? And I know you've touched on this in your book, but for those that haven't read your book as yet, what is the impact that that has on the modern day church today in terms of how church is done, how we do church? What are your thoughts on that in terms of the impact of that image of Jesus as a white man? Um, yeah, please share.
Yeah, I guess I've grown up in the evangelical church, so it is not like I grew up with lots of iconography or lots of paintings in the churches that I went to of Jesus or of God. Now, I spend a lot more time now within Anglican churches, sometimes within Catholic churches, where there are those images, and I can see why it kind of might feel more prevalent there. But I think the way that it shows up in some of our churches, particularly evangelical churches, is in very different ways. So it's not in the images, but it might be in the leadership. It might be in the stories that we tell from the front of the church. It might be in the songs that we sing and the ways that we sing them. It might be in our ways of doing culture, in the food that we eat, in all of these ways that don't necessarily represent what I describe as the mosaic of the kingdom of God, that is multiracial, that is diverse. We still, when we go into our churches, I think, conform to this European ideal of what it is to be a Christian and what it is who God is. So it shows up in those different ways. I think it's having an effect. I think in some ways it's like, why does it matter? It's like, why do these what does it matter that God is represented as white or Jesus is represented as white? And in some ways, it doesn't matter. Um, it, but I realized and I reflected for myself. There is something inside me that hasn't quite believed that I was made in the image of God. Like it or that hadn't quite believed that I was equal to the white church leaders, because I felt a sense of kind of separation um, uh, from God because of the ways in which God was portrayed. Now, that is, for someone who has spent their whole life as a Christian, that is kind of heartbreaking, because I started to kind of unravel and thinking about, the times when I have lost myself and abandoned in worship, or I have prayed to God. Like what I'm picturing is this kind of this like false idol of whiteness. Obviously, I don't think that is who Jesus is. I don't think that is who God is. But there is something that kind of has made me feel separate. And for a lot of black women in particular, and a lot of black people or black and brown people, increasingly in this day and age where we are wrestling with these ideas of what it is to be a human, what it is to welcome all sorts of different people. I think there are lots of younger black people in particular, and black women, who are just leaving the church because they just don't want to be part of, nor do they feel that they have to stay within those spaces in which it's whiteness and that patriarchy that is the kind of the message that is kind of coming out for the front. So I think there is an impact in the kind of the weekly, the day-to-day doing church together of these ideals about who God is. But there's also a kind of, it does affect mission. It does affect how people, whether people feel like the Christian story is one in which they can be invited into, or whether they feel like they have to exclude themselves. So I do think it does matter.
Mhm. Yeah, you made some interesting points there. And I think there is, or there has been, almost like a merge between culture and the church in terms of whiteness. And I recall growing up as a young black boy um, and watching TV. I remember whenever there was a black person on TV, it would be like, my mom would be like, quick, come and have a look, come and see. Trevor McDonald's on the TV, or someone of color, because that wasn't the norm and that didn't happen that often. But like I remember like watching TV shows, for example, and there weren't many people positively represented that looked like me on television. Um, and I remember even like adverts, commercials, whereby though I don't know, I might be showing my age a little bit here, but I remember there was an advert for a shampoo called Timotei, and certain people that are watching of a certain age will know what I'm referring to. But it was a lady, a blonde-haired lady that was in the shower, and she was doing her hair. She was um, supposedly quite attractive, and the tagline was "Because you're worth it." And it was almost like it was communicating that if you don't look like this woman, then you're not worth it, because these are the imageries that were being shown to us, that this is what it looks like. Also as well, like superheroes and things like that, it's only of the late, I don't know, 20 odd years where we've had like Marvel films like the Black Panther. The Incredible Hulk was like the closest thing to diversity that I saw in terms of a superhero that looked like me. And I think culture in many respects has merged with the church, because going into the church, I became a Christian at the age of 19, and it was in a predominantly Black Pentecostal church. And I've been a part of the Vineyard now for somewhere like, where are we? Almost like coming up to 20 years, maybe. Um, Somewhere around there. And I remember going into the church and seeing that it was predominantly white. But it was somewhere that I felt like I needed to be, but that wasn't my experience in terms of where I started as a Christian. And there was this divide where I saw that you had kind of like Black people that congregated together to do church, and white people predominantly congregated to do church. I mean, the Vineyard now is quite a large church in Nottingham. It's much more diverse today than it ever has been, but it hasn't always been that way. Um, and so again, I think that there's been a journey. Well, we're certainly on a journey as a church, but I think that there's been a journey that I've certainly been on, in the sense of like embracing my Blackness in a predominantly white middle class church, because I haven't seen people that look like me to aspire to, or to even believe that there is a place for me. And we have 4 children. We're a blended family, 2 white older children and 2 dual heritage children. And I don't want my dual heritage children in particular to feel like, well, there isn't a place for me. I want them to be in a place whereby, and not just my children, but children, young people from a diverse background, to see in church that there is room for them here, not just in the congregation, but as a part of the team, as a part of the staff team that helps make things happen. Because I think when we just have white people doing that, it kind of inadvertently communicates something wrongly or rightly. And do you have any thoughts? I'm sure you do.
I have many thoughts on this one.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're good, and I hope you're enjoying the podcast. But there's more. Chine and I go much deeper in the conversation, and that's available on the Practice Plus on Patreon. Now, I'd really love to ask you a favor, and that favor is, would you be so kind to buy me a cup of coffee? Now, for those of you that know me well, you know that I don't actually drink coffee. But for $2.99 a month, which is less than a coffee, you can sign up to Patreon and you can get all the exclusive material. And there's resources on there for small groups and for individuals, and reflections and a whole lot more stuff. And so I'd really invite you to buy me a coffee via Patreon and head over there and get the rest of this episode, which goes much deeper. And I just want to encourage you as well that this conversation in particular is one that's precious to me. The whole conversation around race, as a church, we've been on a journey, and I know many other people have been on a journey. And as Chine alludes to, you know, is it business as usual? Have we gone back to how things used to be before George Floyd? This is what we're exploring in the Practice Plus. And so I'd really encourage you to head over there and check that out and buy me a coffee. I'll see you soon. Take care. God bless.